By the time we got to making Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, the machine was so well oiled within the four musicians and the producer, Gus Dudgeon. It was perfection. It was, the musicians understood each other. The band knew what to play. I didn't tell them. The boys did their backing vocals when I was in bed. It was the height of our powers.
It's a rather strange situation to put yourself anyway in the shoes you were wearing, 40 years ago. To this day, I don't really think it is a conceptual album. It may be cinematic and full of stories, but I don't know if that necessarily makes something that's conceptual.
The 40th anniversary edition is one of those rare albums that has a kind of an iconic status. It took Elton to a completely different level. And also, it's the fans' favourite.
It literally was like a mini creative factory at the Chateau when we were recording. When the band were having breakfast, there was a piano in there, and I would come down and grab a cup of coffee or something and give Elton a couple of lyrics that I'd been working on that morning. He'd go in the corner and just start writing while everybody was having breakfast. And he would basically come up with songs. It was just very rapid.
And the songs were just pouring out. I would write at breakfast at the table, the band would get up, and as I was writing, they'd finish their breakfast, join in, and by the time breakfast was over, we'd rehearse 2 songs. We'd written and rehearsed 2 songs, and we went in the studio and recorded them. That was the routine.
Oh, sweet painted lady.
Before Honky Chateau, I didn't really write pop songs, and Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, Benny and the Jets, Candle in the Wind are pop songs. They're nice songs. They stood the test of time, but it was the album that really established me in the charts after Daniel and Crocodile Rock.
There's become this myth-making about songs, like Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting. Bernie wrote it about his youth growing up in Lincoln in the pubs. I feel slightly guilty because I'm not sure that I actually did write it about that.
I remember being at Caribou and the record company phoning up and saying, Benny and the Jets should be the single in America. And I said, no, I want Candle in the Wind. And they fought and fought and fought, and I turned them down so many times until they told me that the record had gone to #1 on the R&B station in Detroit. And for me, a white boy from Pinner who'd grown up loving black music and played the blues and R&B all my life, I went, so I let them have their way, and it shows you that as an artist, sometimes you know nothing.
Goodbye, Norma Jean.
Yeah, I do think it's one of the best songs we've ever written. I think it's an incredible marriage of melody and lyric. People obviously assumed that I was a Marilyn Monroe fan, but she was simply a metaphor for me for fame. It's just that Marilyn had that stigma, that she was Marilyn.
We had Gus Dudgeon, and Gus Dudgeon, I have to say, was the 5th member of the band. The actual sound and the quality of the recording is extraordinary, and that was down to him. He was our 5th member. Like the Beatles had George Martin, we had Gus.
I was just a music fan, and I got into a studio as a T-boy and worked my way downwards.
Well, it was collaborative, definitely, but Gus was holding the reins. He was brilliant in the studio. He was absolutely extraordinary. And you just have to listen to those records sonically. There's nothing to touch them.
Harmony and me were pretty good company.
We had the idea of, on Tumbleweed, of sitting, maybe at the railway station having that shot because of the Americana aspect of the album. But this one was an illustration, and it stood the test of time. And it was a perfect example of where I was at the time as far as the way I dressed and the way I sounded and the way the whole album was a kind of panoramic view of pop music. I wasn't a singer who can move around a stage. I wasn't like that. I was a piano player, and a piano is a 9-foot plank that doesn't do very much. So I had to draw attention to myself by having fun with the costumes and doing whatever I could to use the piano as a prop. I thought it would be nice for some newer artists to give their interpretation of some of the songs. I mean, for example, Benny and the Jets. I wanted Miguel to do that because, for me, he made the best R&B record last year and is the best new R&B singer. And he said yes, and then Wally did the rap on it. Ed Sheeran, and then country artists like Hunter Hayes, who's a really amazing young country singer. Ban Perry, and Zach Brown, who lives in Atlanta. I live in Atlanta part-time, and he's a friend. John Grant, who is, I'm a huge fan of, Imelda May, and Fall Out Boy.
We didn't want to try and recreate the record, and certainly we didn't want to try and compete with the original record. The idea was to see if we could find an interesting new way of looking at the song.
Tell me, Gracie, how does it feel to be so wild?
For example, Ban Perry did a bluegrass version of Grey Seal, which I would never have thought of doing that in a million years. Emily Sandé did a slower version of All the Young Girls Love Alice.
All the young girls love ballads.
On the original album, it's a very fast track. She slowed it down, and when I first heard it, I went, oh. But it works. It was such a great idea, and I would never have thought of that. So, you know, Peter Asher, who put all these people together and kind of produced most of the tracks and A&R'd the 9 new songs, did a wonderful job and let the artists do what they wanted with them.
And it seems to me you lived your life like a candle in the wind.
If I'm honest, if I could have chosen any other song to do it, it would have been anything but Candle in the Wind. And that's not that it isn't a brilliant song, it's just that that song's so special to England's heart. But I think we tackled it in a way that was completely the opposite to what it was before, making it less sad and more upbeat.
Hey, kid, shake it loose together.
Well, Miguel was very impressive in the sense that he said, do you mind if I kind of do my vocal myself? And I went, not at all. But it turned out what he meant was, the way he does his vocals, he sits at the board with the microphone and runs Pro Tools, punches in and out, creates multiple layers of harmony and backgrounds and comps the vocal, and all by himself. Elton, for example, suggested John Grant for Sweet Painted Lady, a great, very traditional, rich baritone voice, you know, old school in a way, but with new school consciousness.
Oh, sweet painted lady.
It's a song that's made for him, really, about a fallen woman, you know, and it's just his lovely angst in his voice is so beautiful.
Another song I love that isn't one of the most famous songs off that album is Your Sister Can't Twist, and suddenly I realized that it would be great for Imelda May. She is one of the greatest living rockabilly singers in the world. She came in with the band, did like 4 or 5 takes, and thank you very much.
I did a track on the Fall Out Boy record, Save Rock and Roll, and they did in return the favour of doing Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting.
Getting that call is definitely one of the weirdest phone calls you'll ever get, because I mean, of course, yes, of course, right? But then there's also, the next question is, why? Why did they think of us, you know? We kind of went our own way, and I was really terrified what Elton would say. And when we turned it in, he was like, love it, you know, he was so excited.
When are you gonna come down? When are you going to let...
And Hunter Hayes played on the basic track because he, traditionally on his records, plays everything. He's an extraordinary musician. I suggested that he might not do that. So we cut it with him playing Wurlitzer electric piano and Jim Keltner playing drums. I really wanted to get the greatness of a Jim Keltner groove, which only he can do, combined with the youthful energy and brilliant musicianship of Hunter Hayes.
So goodbye, Yellow Brick Road, where the dogs of society howl.
When we did the Yellow Brick Road album, I think that really was when we started thinking, we might be pretty good.
It was an incredible time of my life, and that makes me feel emotional, because not sad, but incredibly happy.
I've known Elton since 1967. I think he's a great artist, and I think sometimes people get caught up in the celebrity of Elton, and the Yellow Brick Road is an illustration of how great he is as a musician. And sometimes I think people need to be reminded of that.